Richtig fett wäre mal so eine Ansage in Englisch.
Okay, so I'd just say, this is Mitchell Renz. Follow me on Twitter at MitchellRenz365 and this is the Backfield Boys.
Ja, genau sowas meinte ich, Mitchell.
Are you listening?
FanFoo Worldwide. Meine sehr verehrten Damen, Männer. Heute in Episode 41 der Backfield Boys Show Fantasy Football Experte Mitchell Renz zu Gast bei den Backfield Boys. Eure Gastgeber daher heute Mitchell Renz und TK aus Liebe. Und damit hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einer weiteren Ausgabe der Backfield Boys Show, Episode 41, speziell heute an einem Sonntag, unter dem Titel Renz mit einem Gast aus den USA und natürlich ist Pitch heute bei mir. Hallo Pitch.
Hi TK.
Heute bist du nicht ganz alleine hier bei mir. Es ist allerdings auch nicht Mucki, es ist auch nicht Pi, sondern wir haben einen speziellen Gast diesmal bei uns, nicht eingeflogen, aber via Skype bei uns. Begrüßen wir jetzt bei uns Mitchell Renz aus Massachusetts oder so. Hi Mitchell.
Hey, thank you guys for having me, and I'm really excited to be here, and it's awesome to see that people in Germany are doing fantasy football, because when I lived there, I would have loved to meet you guys.
Yeah, you're near Boston, but you're not a Patriots fan.
Correct. I live maybe 10 Minuten from Boston, and no, I'm not a Patriots fan. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so it's not. But I don't really have a favorite team, just because it kind of creates bias for fantasy football.
Okay. Baseball? Favorite team? Red
favorite
Sox
team is
or
the Mets.
Pirates?
The Mets?
The Mets. The Mets, yeah.
The Mets are great. I'm a Mets fan also. Mets and Rangers.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad played for the Mets in the 80s, so that's kind of why that is that. But I also played baseball in Germany for the Cologne Cardinals, so if there's any baseball fans, go support the Cardinals.
Or the alligators in Sweden.
Yeah.
So you're a fantasy football expert, we say. You have a PhD in fantasy football, but I know that's not for a doctor or something like that. It's for passion, honesty, and determination, right?
Yeah, good. That's good. Not many people. Everybody thinks they're like, oh, how the heck do you get a PhD in fantasy football? But you guys did your homework, so congrats.
Yeah, sure. Nicht jeder kommt in unsere Show. Yeah.
He's always doing it.
Yeah. So, but you're an expert, right? Mm-hmm. What you do in fantasy football?
So I'm the head writer at Gridiron Experts. I'm a writer at the Fantasy Footballers and at Fantasy Pros. And I run my own podcast, part of the Gridiron Experts network called The Fantasy Empire.
So you're a writer and podcaster, and you're talking about fantasy football all of the time.
Yeah, 24/7, 365 days a year. It's crazy here in the United States. It's much like football over there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, you do also daily fantasy?
Yeah, no, I love DraftKings and FanDuel. Daily fantasy is huge over here. And for Gridiron Experts, coming out every Friday, I will be doing a daily fantasy article. And I believe FanDuel gives out $75 million every week for prizes, so there's a lot of incentive to do it over here.
Is daily fantasy also a reason why fantasy football is so popular in the States right now, or was it even before?
It was always popular, but the emergence of daily fantasy sports has definitely escalated the growth of fantasy football. But I mean, right now there's something like 80 million people in the United States doing fantasy football, which in comparison, there's like 82 million people in Germany. So
every German plays fantasy football in
great potential, yeah.
Every show we start with a
quick question of the day.
Quick question of the day. Today it's welchen Spieler kann man am schlechtesten einschätzen? Worauf bist du am meisten gespannt? In English it's which player do you have the hardest time to predict for next year, and
what are you most excited about?
Yes.
I guess that player would be Sammy Watkins. And for me, Sammy Watkins has the upside of a top 6 wide receiver, but the guy just can't stay on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in 2014, he was drafted ahead of guys like Mike Evans and Odell Beckham. Like, this guy is an elite talent. And you could see it a little bit in 2015, his last 6 games. He had, I believe, it was like 35 catches, 570 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Like, the guy can play. The guy's elite. And the notes out of camp so far have been good, but I've also read that I think he left camp yesterday injured. So I don't know what to do with him. I love him as a talent. It's just, dude can't stay healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, also thought about it, and my players would be Todd Gurley.
Okay.
Todd Gurley last year was widely seen as one of the best running backs in the draft, even the number 1 pick in some drafts. And in the end, he ended up as a big bust. Was top 5 in touches, but production never came out. Just had 885 yards and 6 touchdowns, I believe. Now Jeff Fisher is out, but you have to invest a 2nd-round pick this year. And it's boom or bust in the end.
Totally agree with that. And I think not having Jeff Fisher is definitely good. It's not going to hurt. But when I look at Todd Gurley and I look at the amount of workload that I expect him to get, not many running backs get that type of workload. And his rookie year, he averaged 4.8 yards per carry. And last year, he averaged 3.2. If he can just get around his career average of 3.9 yards per carry, which I think is very doable, he's going to end up as a top 12 running back just due to workload. So that's why I like to pick Gurley. 2nd round still a little rich for me. If I can get him in the 3rd round, though, I like that value.
Yeah, okay.
I find it hard to predict every tier 2 running backs this year. I don't know what to get from Melvin Gordon, DeMarco Murray, Todd Gurley, all of these guys. Do you have some rankings on them for us?
Yeah, you can check out my rankings on Fantasy Pros or at Gridiron Experts. If you just Google Mitchell Renz Fantasy Football Rankings, they should come up. But in regards to those guys, Melvin Gordon for me is my running back 4. I absolutely love Melvin Gordon this year.
Okay. Right behind the big 3?
I loved him a little bit more. Say that again?
Right behind the big 3? Right behind Zeke, Bell, and David Johnson, right?
Okay.
Well, Melvin Gordon, his offensive line was greatly improved, and then they drafted a guy named Forrest Lamp, who I think can be regarded close to Zach Martin, the offensive lineman for the Cowboys. Unfortunately, Lamp tore his ACL, and he's out for the year. So, actually, I had Melvin Gordon ranked 3rd ahead of Ezekiel Elliott before that injury and with everything going on with Zeke. Now I slid Melvin Gordon back down to 4. When you look at Melvin Gordon's situation, I think he's going to get a ton of carries, and the offensive coordinator, Anthony Lynn, who was at the Bills, is now head coach at the Chargers, and the Bills were first the last 2 seasons in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. So I love Melvin Gordon.
And after that, DeMarco Murray, Shady McCoy?
No, it would be Melvin Gordon 4, LaShawn McCoy 5, Devonta Freeman 6, and then DeMarco Murray 7.
Okay. So we started with a quick question. Thank you for that. We have a full program of Fantasy Football today. Also heute vollgepackt die Sendung mit Fantasy Football und natürlich mit Mitchell Renz. Wir nutzen die Chance, dass wir ihn hier heute am Start haben, um einen kompletten Überblick über die wichtigsten Themen eigentlich so kurz vor dieser Saison noch zu geben. But you also said you were living in Cologne. What's the biggest difference from Germany to the US?
Besides the size of the people, no, I would say just the culture of Germany in general. Germany was one of the most fun places I ever lived in, and on the baseball team, all the Americans, we got paid in money, but a bunch of the other German players got paid in beer, which I just always thought was absolutely hilarious and fit the stereotypes so well. But I'll say, like, beer, like the culture of drinking, and it is more looked at as cultural, while over here in the US people look at it as like an abusive, like, oh yeah, let's get drunk kind of thing. But and also just the lifestyle. I work crazy hours over here, and the US is just super busy. In Germany, you can enjoy life a little bit more. So I do miss that. But I lived in Cologne. I live in Pesch, a little like right outside of Cologne, and I absolutely loved it.
Muki is from Weidenpesch.
Yeah.
The third guy on the show is from Weidenpesch, Köln-Weidenpesch. Yours.
I know where that is. rode the bus and subway many times.
How long did you live in Germany?
I lived for an entire year. I got a work visa, and I was able to stay there for a year. To be honest, though, I actually dated a girl who lived in Germany. She was a foreign exchange student at my high school, and we dated for a pretty long time. So I was to Germany many times, and then I got the opportunity after college to come over, play baseball, and live there for a year.
The most beautiful thing you enjoyed in Germany? Well, you said you had a girl here, so the answer is quite simple. The girl and the beer.
My favorite, actually, if there's anything about Germany that I miss the most, it's Döner.
Dinner.
Okay.
Oh man, there was
German.
me and my buddies. We used to just go out and drink some beers and then go out for dinner. My favorite place in Cologne is Oruck, I believe is the name, Oruc. Give that place a try. It's near the university. I think right off. Oh man, I can't think of. It's not Ebertplatz. It's not Ziplische Straße, I think is the name.
Yeah.
Ziplische Straße, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, party hard all the time and dinner at
night.
4 at the night, right after the club. Yeah, the greatest thing. We talked about daily fantasy. We talked about all the different things you can play there. What do you enjoy the most? Standard scoring, PPR, half point PPR, daily fantasy, best ball?
I think. Well, I do both. So I like DFS, but for season long, I like half point PPR. I think it's the most fair. I think PPR, you give running backs, pass catching running backs too much of an advantage, and wide receivers are overvalued. So I like half point PPR. I will say, though, PPR is easier to predict. So for somebody who does as much research, maybe as you and I, we can take advantage of people who don't do as much research compared to standard, because standard league, you benefit more from touchdowns, and touchdowns are just harder to predict. That's why I like the leagues that I'm in. It's half point PPR, 0.25 for running back carries. Obviously 6 points, touchdowns, passing, doesn't matter. So I like bonuses. I like to score points.
Do you play individual defensive players? IDP?
No, I don't do. I'm in a keeper league this year with Gridiron Experts. We do IDP, but for like my family league or my leagues with my college buddies, no, I don't do IDP. It's just I like to concentrate on the offense.
Okay. Do you play some other sports fantasies? Baseball, basketball, stuff like that? Just football?
Football all year. It's that big here in the United States, and I'm hoping really soon where I can quit my other job and just do fantasy football 365 days a year, and I think I'm close.
It's a dream, man.
How much tape do you watch?
Say that again?
How much tape do you watch? Is it very much game tape or just focusing on stats and stuff like that?
Well, I probably do close to 40 to 50 hours a week of just fantasy football, whether it's stats, podcasts, writing articles, watching tape. But in the off season, I watched probably 20 hours a week of tape. With the fantasy footballers, we have the NFL Game Pass, so I can go back and watch as much tape as I possibly want. And then during the season, I'll watch the games, and then I'll go back if I want to learn more about a player, and I'll watch some game tape on them.
How do you predict a player progressing or regressing? Just by watching tape?
It's a really good question. So for a quarterback, for example, I'm going to look at his offensive line, how much time they're giving him. I'm also going to look at his wide receivers. I'm going to see what kind of routes they run, how quick they can get off the line of scrimmage, what kind of plays they're running, what kind of game scripts, are they winning or are they losing? And then ultimately, I'm going to see what kind of arm strength he has. I'm going to look at anticipation and the timing he has with his wide receivers.
Mm.
And then running backs, wide receivers, it all kind of goes hand to hand. But for running backs, I want to see vision. I want to see them hit a hole, and then I want to see them explode. I want to see...
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my favorite things, it's kind of going off track, but I watched tape on Eddie Lacy. And after every single Eddie Lacy run last year, the guy got up and he was excited to be on the field. Like, I look for that kind of stuff too, because you can see a lot of times when a guy runs and he just gets clobbered, and when he gets up and he's psyched and he's happy to do it, that shows me like the guy still has the will to play. So I look for little things like that, and there's so many different moving parts on a football field. I mean, it's 22 guys on a field, so you have to kind of really hone in and know what you're looking for.
Same stuff with Thomas Rawls last year, I think. Every time he got hit, he got up and seemed pumped up. But Eddie Lacy is better than Thomas Rawls, right?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I'll say like a healthy Eddie Lacy, yes. But the one thing that also scares me with Rawls is he's like said in the past that he does not like to go out of bounds. He feels like he loses when he goes out of bounds, and he's not that big of a guy out of Central Michigan. And when he gets hit, he looks for contact, and that's why we've seen him get injured. So,
someone like you who watches a lot of tape and gets a lot of stats, is there some nuggets for us? Maybe that the usual fantasy football player doesn't get, some surprising stuff.
Okay, let me think of a surprising stat. So Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Ben Roethlisberger, and Le'Veon Bell have been on the Steelers for 3 years. They've never played a complete game together. The only time that they've been on the field at the same time was the Bengals 2015, which I believe was week 8, for I think half a game, and it's right before Le'Veon Bell got hurt. In the games that Ben Roethlisberger has Martavis Bryant, it's a 19-game sample size. He averages 336 yards and 2.2 touchdowns a game. That's a pace of 5,376 yards and 35 touchdowns.
Okay.
That's a surprising stat.
But Martavis Bryant also has a lot of red flags with him.
Oh, yeah. If he was playing in Amsterdam, he'd be okay, but in the U.S., maybe not.
Some other stats you want to bring up? You want to surprise us with?
Some other stats. Okay. Let me think. Blake Bortles has 11 career wins and 11 career pick sixes. He has 69 turnovers. What's another good one? Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, and Antonio Brown all finished in the top 10 last year. The only other wide receiver to finish in the top 10 the last 2 years with those guys is Doug Baldwin.
Okay.
If you guys like stats, I wrote an article called 100 Fantasy Stats Heading into 2017 for Fantasy Pros. It's one of my most popular articles, so it's just covered head to toe with stats like that.
Yeah, I think we need to check that out.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Give us some sleeper for the next year.
Well, I actually just wrote an article for Fantasy Pros on sleeper running backs, and some of the guys that I like Amir Abdullah, I like Duke Johnson. I don't really consider this guy a sleeper. I consider more of a breakout. Mike Gillislee.
Okay.
James Conner, the backup running back for the Steelers. And then some other guys who I'm crazy about are Jonathan Williams, backup running back for the Bills. Jamal Williams, backup running back for the Packers.
Let me get to Mike Gillislee real quickly. You are not scared of Bill Belichick?
Bill Belichick hates fantasy football.
Because I had Shane Vereen a few years ago, and since then I said to myself, I will never get any Patriots running backs again.
I can understand that, but if you go back and look at when Bill Belichick has had an elite power running back, guys like Stephen Ridley in 2012, Garrett Blunt last year, the one thing that Mike Gillislee has that none of the other Patriots running backs do is he's different. He is a power running back. Last year, Mike Gillislee had 38.6% of his runs resulted in first downs, highest in the NFL. Last season, Mike Gillislee had the highest yards per carry in the NFL, 5.7. Mike Gillislee was taking LaShawn McCoy off the field when they got near the goal line because that's how good of a goal line back he is. The Patriots will get plenty of first downs, and I imagine they're going to be winning a lot, so he's going to be killing the clock, and they're going to be around the end zone. There's no reason why, if you give Mike Gillislee 220 carries, that he can't be an RB1. And I have him in my top 12 for running backs. And I love Mike Gillislee. And the reports out of camp have been good. And I'm up here in Boston, and the hype is real around Mike Gillislee.
So what were the other names you just mentioned? You said some backup running backs like in Buffalo, right?
Jonathan Williams. He's going a little bit later. I'm not as crazy about the talent that Jonathan Williams has, but the opportunity. So the last two backup running backs for the Buffalo Bills, were Carlos Williams in 2015, who had 500 yards and 7 touchdowns, and then who was it last year? Mike Gillisley last year, 500 yards and 8 touchdowns, and backup running back roles, which are top 24 running backs almost. And if anything happens to LaShawn McCoy, who's over the career 2,000-yard carry mark, I mean, if he gets a significant role, he could be a pretty good running back. And what's another good one? CJ Prosise in PPR leagues. I think he has a real chance to be pretty good. He's a really talented running back. I don't trust Eddie Lacy and Rawls to stay healthy. And yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't trust Prosise either, but I think he has a legit shot to catch 60 balls.
You said Duke Johnson, Cleveland. Many people here in Germany are hyped with Crowell.
Yeah.
Why Duke Johnson?
Well, I think Crowell will be good, but I think Duke Johnson is a better running back than Isaiah Crowell, and I think he is a more all-around running back. The Browns have already come out and said that they plan on putting him at slot receiver, and Duke Johnson, the last 2 seasons, has had 61 receptions and 53 receptions. And now with that offensive line, I mean, Duke Johnson can run the ball too.
And the vampire behind the center, Brock Osweiler. We call him the vampire, Brock Osweiler. Doesn't he look like the guy from what's it called?
The
vampire movies here with
Twilight.
Doesn't he look like the guy from
Robert Pattinson, right?
We call him the vampire here.
Yeah.
No, he definitely does. It's a good. I don't know if I've ever heard that, but you're totally right. That's funny.
That's why he's the vampire. Aren't you scared of Brock Osweiler?
I don't know if he'll be the starter. I think they're just putting him in week 1 in the preseason just to see him fail with the team, just so like they don't have to worry about it. He's just not a good quarterback. And I mean, Cody Kessler's okay, and Kaiser, their rookie, is I think the most talented out of the bunch. He just needs to learn. But Duke Johnson's the all-time leading rusher out of the Miami University, which has produced really solid running backs, and he was one of the most elusive running backs last year in the league. And with that offensive line, it's pretty good. And I also went back and I watched tape on Isaiah Crowell. Isaiah Crowell has 16 runs last year, which realistically came in garbage time when they're getting blown out. If you take away some of his 16 runs, his yards per carry goes under 4.
Okay.
So I was not impressed with Isaiah Crowell's tape, I'll be honest.
So you'll take Isaiah Crowell completely off your draft board? And
not completely. I don't take anybody completely off my draft board, but I probably won't have him on any of my teams because he's going to go way higher than where I'm going to draft him.
When will you spend some of your drafts on Duke Johnson?
In PPR, I think he's my RB 30. In standard, I think he's my RB 38. So I don't have that in front of me exactly.
Bounce back candidates. Which players will bounce back?
What about CJ Anderson, for example? A lot of people are discussing about him.
See, I like Anderson, and they upgraded their offensive line. Garrett Bowles in the draft, their first-round pick out of Utah, and Ron Leary, who is one of the better offensive linemen from the Cowboys. The issue with me with the Broncos is their quarterback situation. I don't like Trevor Siemian, and it seems like Trevor Siemian's winning the job, and I just can't. It's tough. The backup running backs for the Broncos do not scare me. It's C.J. Anderson's job, but C.J. Anderson has not been able to stay healthy, and I'm not crazy about Anderson, I'll be honest, but if he can play 16 games, he'll be right up there with some of the best running backs.
So which players do bounce back, you think? Give us one running back, one wide receiver.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my top bounce back running back would be Todd Gurley, and it's for some of the reasons we talked about earlier. I'm trying to think of another bounce back running back, so I don't have to go off Gurley. Lamar Miller. I like Lamar Miller to bounce back. Last season, the Texans scored 25 touchdowns. It's the first time ever that a team that made the playoffs scored 25 touchdowns or less. So, and why we think the main reason why that offense was so bad? The vampire.
Yeah. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
He's not there anymore. And I'm not as crazy about Savage or Watson. The only guy that's thrown a touchdown on the Texans is Brandon Weeden, which I think is pretty laughable. And also Lamar Miller, he was pretty good. He averaged I think 21 touches a game, and he was a workhorse running back, and that defense is probably going to be better last year. I would imagine J.J. Watt coming back helps. So if they're going to be in game scripts where they can run the ball and use Miller, so I like Miller as a bounce back. I think he's getting kind of slept on a little bit.
Wide receiver?
Wide receiver. My main guys are normally Sammy Watkins, but now with him, the question marks around him, I don't really know. But the other guys, I like Allen Robinson. I like John Brown. With Allen Robinson, for me, it's really as simple as the coach, Gus Bradley, isn't there anymore. Gus Bradley has a career winning percentage of 14 wins, or he's got 14 wins and 48 losses. It's the second worst winning percentage in NFL history. The only guy with a worse winning percentage than Gus Bradley, his name's Burt Bell. He coached the Browns from 1936 to 1941. As long as Gus Bradley and Burt Bell aren't on the sidelines for the Jaguars, I think they're going to do better.
Okay.
And it's Doug Marrone.
Even though they still have Blake Bortles under center.
Well, apparently Blake Bortles was dealing with 2 separated shoulders last year, so I don't know how much that impacts him. But in the 2 games that Gus Bradley wasn't coaching the Jaguars, Allen Robinson got 12 targets in both of those games, and I think had combined 225 yards. He didn't score any touchdowns, but I mean, he's only 2 years removed from 14 touchdowns. So I think he gets kind of 10 touchdowns, 1,000 yards, maybe 75 catches, and which would be a top 18 receiver.
And you get him pretty cheap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the guy you can get really cheap, who I'm really high on, is John Brown. John Brown was dealing with sickle cell trait last year, and it seems like they figured that out. And John Brown, when he got drafted, was being compared to Antonio Brown. Bruce Arians drafted John Brown, and he was part of the regime that drafted Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's 5'10", 180 pounds. John Brown's 5'10", 180 pounds. John Brown has 152 catches his first 3 years. Antonio Brown has 151 catches through his first 3 years. In that 4th year, Antonio Brown went off. 110 catches, 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns. I don't know if John Brown can do that, but he's a very talented wide receiver in an offense that wants to pass.
Some bust candidates?
Some bust candidates. Man. So Jay Ajayi, Jordan Howard, Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, Delaney Walker, Alshon Jeffrey, DeAndre Hopkins.
Hopkins? Really? Again this year?
Well, I've seen him go as wide receiver 12, but for me, he's wide receiver 20, and it's just because of the offense. They want to lean on the run. Bill O'Brien, the years that he's been coaching the Texans, they've been top 6 in rush attempts every single year. And there's not going to be enough volume for Hopkins to be a productive fantasy wide receiver, in my opinion. And that defense is a very good defense, and I don't think it's going to lead to enough scoring opportunities for Hopkins.
Okay.
In which rounds do you start to think about all the sleepers? Is there some roster construction thoughts within? I find it very hard to get them at the right spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have a guy that you definitely want, I think it's okay to reach for a sleeper. And if you think that he is a lottery ticket and it could be the ultimate league winner, I mean, if you drafted Jordan Howard last year, if you drafted David Johnson in 2015, doesn't really matter where you drafted him, it was definitely worth it.
Okay.
And if you can try to pick out those guys and get those guys, I think it's pretty good. But also, you need to look at ADP, look at the people in your league, try to understand where you think they're going to take them. But for me, I like to get my sleepers 8, 9, and after that. And if I know I can take some more home run swings later on, I'll do that. And it's why I take kicker and defense with my last 2 picks.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't even take a defense or a kicker, though, in the draft. If my league settings don't require for me to take a kicker and a defense, I'll take an extra home run swing on a running back who I think could pay off and plays really well in the preseason. And then week 1, if I need to pick up a kicker or a defense, I can.
Okay. One last topic before we take a little break would be tight ends. Tight ends, I think is the maybe the hardest part for me. Well, you got your running back stats, you got your wide receiver stats. Tight ends, most of the time it seems like there's Gronk and the rest. And you stream kickers, you stream defenses, you also stream tight ends? Or how do you handle the whole tight end situation?
Well, I don't stream tight ends. I normally can find a tight end that I like that's going a little bit later, and I can use him throughout the season. Like the guys that I like to target this year, Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, Kyle Rudolph. Those are the 3 tight ends that I normally get on most of my teams because they're not being valued. If I can get Gronk in round 3, I'm excited. I'll take Gronk just because he has the upside. But besides that, I mean, those are really the only 4 tight ends that I've really ended up with in fantasy drafts this season.
Is there anyone like Gronk? Is Kelsey... The next Gronk is Jordan Reed. Valuable like Gronk or anywhere near Gronk? Or is it really Gronk and the rest?
Yeah, it's Gronk, some dirt, and then the rest. I mean, there's just nobody. There's nobody close to what Gronk can do. He's just unbelievable with scoring touchdowns. If you could tell me that Gronk is going to play 14 games, I would take him in the second round. If you told me Gronk's going to play 16 games, he's easily a first-round pick. He's just that much of a difference maker. Jordan Reed is up there, but Jordan Reed has had like 6 career concussions. He's already dealing with some injuries this season, and I mean, the guy just could never stay healthy. And when he's on the field, he's great, but he's more of an injury risk than Gronk.
Yeah. Okay. Are you looking for touchdowns, targets, or what are you looking for in your tight end?
All the above. In a PPR league, I'll look for targets because a lot of times the targets lead to receptions. So the one thing that I've been asking people this year, and I'll ask you guys this right now, I'm going to give you tight end A. Tight end A last season averaged 6.6 targets, 54.7 yards, and is being drafted in the 11th round. That's tight end A. Tight end B averaged 7.3 targets and 70 yards a game and is being drafted in the 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you rather have in a PPR league?
Well, I take my tight end late, so I'll take the tight end A, right? 11th round.
Well, for me, I think that's pretty obvious, right?
Yep.
Tight end A is Eric Ebron. Tight end B is Travis Kelce.
Last year?
This year, correct.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's some surprising stuff.
That's surprising, yeah.
So Eric Ebron last year was on pace to realistically be very close to Travis Kelce. The only thing was Eric Ebron wasn't scoring any touchdowns. He scored 1 touchdown. Last season, Anquan Boldin was 3rd in the NFL in red zone targets, 22. And 2nd in the league in red zone yards, 107. I think now that Anquan Boldin is with the Bills, a lot of times we see tight ends, they take into that role. And I mean, Ebron is a very athletic guy. He's taken in the 1st round, 10th overall by the Lions. He's now in his 4th year. He's only 24 years old. And reports out of camp are that he is going to be very involved in that offense and especially in the red zone. So I like Ebron. And the one guy who I stay away from is Travis Kelce in drafts because he's being overdrafted.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce last year finished as tight end 1, so people think, oh, I'm going to draft him as tight end 1. I'm going to draft him high. He scored 138 standard fantasy points last year. If he would have scored 138 standard points in 2015, he would have finished as tight end 7.
Okay.
Last season was a really bad year for tight ends, and I'm not going to overdraft Kelce because he had a good year and a bad year for tight ends.
Even without Macklin, even with all the circumstances in Kansas City?
I mean, do you trust Alex Smith? I mean, Alex Smith threw for a career high 3,512 yards. That's laughable.
So we'll take a little break or something.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Little break, and then we'll be back with some draft strategies and some more fantasy football. So, da sind wir wieder und bei uns immer noch Mitchell Renz aus den USA. Aber wenn ihr Mitchell Renz jetzt mal so ein bisschen auch auf YouTube verfolgt habt, bei uns jetzt gerade im Clip, dann werdet ihr sehen, er hat ein ganz spezielles Shirt an. Das hält er gerade auch ganz stolz in die Kamera mit dem Bundesadler und schöner altdeutscher Schrift in Gold auf Rot mit Deutschland. Very nice shirt. Where did you get the shirt? In Cologne?
No, actually, my buddy before I went over to Germany bought it at Walmart, so it's not made in Germany. I do have some Cologne shirts, but I figured I would rep all of Germany, not just Cologne.
Okay. So we talked a lot about fantasy football. You're an expert. You're also on Twitter, right?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365. I write for fantasy footballers, fantasy pros, and gridiron experts.
And you have a lot of posts going on, a lot of tweets, and a lot of questions, and a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, I try to interact. I mean, I think Twitter is a family. It's a community. It's one reason why when I was in Germany, I didn't really have a lot of people to speak fantasy football with, and it's one reason why I really got on Twitter. It's a reason why I started doing podcasts, because I missed the interaction with people, because talking about things that I liked. And like I said, I wish I would have known you guys were into this, or maybe I would have stayed in Germany. I don't know, but I do Twitter to interact with people, to get people's ideas, and at the end of the day, Twitter is like my second family. I love interacting with people and helping people out. So yeah, find me on Twitter.
Lohnt sich auf jeden Fall. Wir folgen ihm auch, privat wie auch mit den Backfield Boys, und ganz, ganz viele interessante Fakten dort immer am Start und natürlich auch der Austausch. Also wenn man sich mit verschiedenen Leuten über Fantasy Football austauschen möchte, folgt man Mitchell Renz und dann kommt man da auch in Kontakt mit vielen, vielen anderen Meinungen und vielen, vielen anderen Leuten. Mitchell, you said, du kannst noch ein bisschen Deutsch.
Ja, ein bisschen.
Ja, du verstehst uns noch, aber das Ausdrücken ist ein bisschen schwierig. Ist so ein bisschen wie bei mir mit Französisch. Ja, also ich verstehe Französisch komplett, aber ich kann es halt nicht mehr sprechen.
Komplett,
also
komm, hör auf.
Ohne Witz. Wenn ich bei einer Hochzeit sitze, bei einer französischen Hochzeit, verstehe ich alles am Tisch, auch wenn über mich gelästert wird, wie er da die Muscheln isst, aber ich kann mich halt nicht ausdrücken. Das ist halt
man kennt das, wenn man regelmäßig auf französischen Hochzeiten ist.
Ja. In wie vielen Ligen spielst du? Did you get that?
Wie bitte?
In wie vielen Ligen spielst du Fantasy Football?
Yep, I don't. Not many people talk German fantasy football.
And how many leagues do you play fantasy football?
How many leagues do you play?
Oh gosh, man, more than 10.
Okay,
it's a lot. I've lost count. I'd have to go back and look at them all, but there's so many.
And you're really active on all of them.
Yeah, no, you have to be. But the ones that I'm most crazy about, my family league, we've been doing that for 12 years. We have a trophy that's 5 feet tall. So I'm trying to think how much that would be in maybe like a little bit over 3 meters.
Okay.
We get the names engraved in it. It's very heavy. It's probably like 25 kilo. Wait, does that make sense? That might be too much.
Half a human.
10, maybe 10 kilo. Yeah.
A big baby.
But it's a huge trophy, and it's my favorite league, and it's just for the bragging rights. And I do a league with my college buddies, and I'm in a dynasty league with the gridiron experts, and then I'm in a league called the Scott Fish Bowl. I don't know how much you guys know about the Scott Fish Bowl, but it's a fantasy football league with 720 people in it, of like the top experts in the industry, and it's that league is crazy. That one you have to pay close attention to.
A lot of competition there, right?
How does it work then with so many people?
It's kind of like one big league, right? And then there's 60 mini leagues inside that one big league. So from weeks 1 through 12, you play everybody in your mini league. And then the winner of each division, so 60 winners, plays in another mini league. And then the winner of their mini leagues plays in another mini league. And it's just like, it just works its way up, and that's how it goes.
Okay.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if
it
really
is.
Cool.
So the most important or the best part of fantasy football for us is the draft. We celebrate the draft. We get into a hotel and draft all day long and really celebrate it. But the draft is also very important and stressful. Are there some strategies in the draft that you do in every draft, like I will get, like, for example, I will get my quarterback late. I will get a running back start in the first round. Are there some strategies you try to implement in all of your drafts?
So it depends what draft I'm in. If I'm in a PPR draft, I'm definitely going to try to take a wide receiver with one of my first 2 picks. If I'm in a standard league, I like to try to take a running back with one of my first 2 picks. If I'm in a 2-quarterback league, I like to get both of my quarterbacks before round 6. If I can, I like to get at least one quarterback in the first 2 rounds, or if I can get a really stud guy like a Breeze, Brady, or Rodgers, I'll wait pretty late and then get another quarterback. In standard leagues, though, in general, I like to wait on a QB unless I can get one of the big 3, Brady, Breeze, or Rodgers, but I don't normally take those guys until rounds 3, 4, 5, so they don't normally end up on my team.
Okay.
But when there's just so many good quarterbacks in the NFL, so you can just wait, and I'm okay getting guys like Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton late in my drafts and building a stud team around them. But the other rule that I definitely live by is it's okay to drink a little, but wait until after, and then you guys can have fun. But
yeah,
we're too nervous, right? We never drink before the draft. No.
Yeah. Germans never drink in general, I know.
Right. 0 RB, 0 wide receiver are some strategies a lot of people hear about. Mm-hmm. Are you preferring one of them, or are you...
So for me, I've never really done 0 wide receiver. I'm not crazy about that. If I will do one, it's 0 RB, and that's only in a PPR league. And the reason that is because I think you can find pass-catching running backs late in drafts, and you can build your team around that. With that being said, I don't go into a draft saying this is exactly what I'm going to do. I build out tiers. So what I mean by that is my tier 1 running backs are Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, and Zeke. My tier 2 running backs are Melvin Gordon and LaShawn McCoy. What I do then is I put each position in its own tier, and then I look as to how the draft's going, and if I have a tier 1 guy compared to a tier 2 guy at another position, I go with the tier 1 position. Every draft is different, and at the Fantasy Footballers, they have a saying, you have to be water, you have to just mold to each of your drafts, and you can't treat every draft the same. It's just not realistic. So having experience and having some sort of game plan and knowledge on the players that you want is, I think, more of a helpful tip than just saying, I'm going to get a wide receiver, a running back, a quarterback, tight end, and that's it, no matter what. You're going to end up screwing yourself.
So it's all about roster construction, right? ADP, is it important for you? Or do you have your own ADP or your own rankings and work by them?
So I do have my own rankings, which you can find at gridironexperts.com, or you can find on Fantasy Pros and just click Pick Experts, and you can just select my name. With that being said, I know who certain people like in my leagues, and when you're in expert leagues, you can check out their rankings. When you're with your friends or your family, you kind of know from past years certain guys that they like, but I stick to ADP. So whatever the ADP is on my draft board, so if I'm using ESPN, I'm going to pull up ESPN's ADP because the normal person doesn't do research the way that I do, and I know that. So they're going to rely on people who put out the ADP. And if I can take advantage of seeing what people think, then you can get better bargains and draft certain guys when you want them. So you definitely need to pay attention to ADP all season long, though, so you can watch guys rise and fall.
Do you strictly live by your own rankings? I find it hard myself sometimes that I got my rankings in front of me and I have to take a player which I usually don't like, but he's the highest available on my draft board. So for me personally, it's hard then to draft this player. Are you strictly on your own rankings, or are there some situations in drafts that you're like, man, I got to take him, but I take a guy that's behind him because that's my feeling right now?
It's a good question. So the way I'll look at it as, I'm a guy who always likes to get value in my drafts. If I look at my rankings and, like, let's say I have Mike Gillislee really high. He's my running back, 12 or 13. And according to my rankings, he should go as the pick like 30 or 31. If I'm in a regular draft, I won't take Mike Gillislee at RB 13. I won't take him at pick overall 30 because I'll look at his ADP, and his ADP says he's going to go 20, 30 picks later. So I'll try to wait on that value, and I'll get him at that point. I hope that answers your question. Like, I do look at my rankings and I do try to combine my rankings with normal ADP, but at the end of the day, I look at value, and I'm going to try to get a guy at a value no matter what.
So you're looking at for the guys, or you're waiting for the guys to fall, and then you take them. Okay.
Like, if I have a guy that's ranked higher than another guy, but according to ADP, I'm trying to think of a good example. So if Brandon Cooks and Sammy Watkins, I have Sammy Watkins ranked, I think, higher than Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks goes before Sammy Watkins in drafts. If I want both of those guys on my team, I'm okay drafting Brandon Cooks first because I know Sammy Watkins is going to fall. So then I have a better chance of getting both instead of just getting one.
Okay. Are the players just numbers for you? You said you have no favorite team. Your favorite player is Drew Brees, I think, right?
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, man. Good for you.
Yeah. But you have no favorite team. My favorite team are the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm a little bit biased with some players from the Eagles. But I drafted Jordan Matthews last year, and I got some Redskins players on my team. I'm very proud of myself for doing that. But are they just numbers for you, or do you try to be completely non-biased in drafts? Is it possible, or is it hard?
Well, for me, I mean, I am completely unbiased. I think there's only one person in the NFL who I just can't draft, and it's Joe Flacco. The one thing about fantasy football for me is it is supposed to be fun. I mean, and you have to be able to root for the people that you want to see succeed. I mean, there's no problem. Like, if I had to root for one team, I guess it would kind of be the Jets. I worked for the Jets in college a little bit, and my dad's a Jets fan, so like there's that. But I mean, if I have Tom Brady, I hope Tom Brady throws for 5 touchdowns against the Jets. So I'm probably not the best fan. With that being said, like Joe Flacco is just a guy who I just cannot draft because I just can't root for him. It's just it irks me way too much, and it's literally painful.
Why?
It's because I don't think he's any good, and he had that Super Bowl run, and he was super cocky, and he made the Ravens pay him all this money, and ever since they've paid him all this money, he's stunk. So that's
right.
Yeah,
that's right. So you said it. Fantasy football is fun. First of all, we call it in Germany. We call it FanFoo. #FanFoo on Twitter and Instagram. Because fantasy football is full with all of you American guys, so you don't get any German things on it. It's just watering down. Yeah. So we have FanFoo in Germany. If you want to tweet something in German about fantasy football, use #FanFoo, and all the German fantasy footballers will read it on Twitter. but it's fun. And
send me that hashtag. I'll definitely do it because when I used to watch football on, I can't think of the television station it's on over there. The guy with long hair makes me want to rip my eyes out. You know?
Okay, that's Ike.
Ike, yeah.
Oh God, he was the worst. I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys like him, but I couldn't stand him.
It's our German football community here, right?
Yeah. So, football in Germany is a little bit different than in the US.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fun. What's the most fun thing you ever experienced with fantasy football?
I would say my first championship. I was in Germany, and in my family league, I played for 10 years and never won it. I had the most wins, most playoff wins, but could never win the championship. And the year before that, I came in second on like a Hail Mary play by L.W. Beckham. But I remember in Germany, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. The Giants were playing the Vikings, and I was winning by, I think, like 15 points. And the Giants were getting absolutely blown out by the Vikings. And my aunt, who I was playing in the championship, had Eli Manning and Will Tye. And I was like, oh, man, I'm going to win. I'm finally going to win. And then the Vikings ended up scoring a quick touchdown. And I'm thinking, oh, no, Eli Manning's going to come out on the field. He's going to throw a touchdown to Tye, and I'm screwed. In our league, if you get to 300 yards for a QB, it's major bonus points. And Eli was right there. And I can't think of the backup quarterback at the moment for the Giants, but he came trotting out on the field, and the second team offense came out for the Giants. And man, I almost broke down into tears at 5 o'clock in the morning at a German bar. I think it was Joe Champs is where I was. And I was super happy and I was like, I finally won. So it was awesome.
That's the great thing about Germany. You get to see the games at night. And,
yep.
well, it's great on the one hand.
Advantage and disadvantage at the same time, right?
But we also celebrated many victories in the night and go to bed afterwards.
Yeah. or even directly to work.
Was war dein schönstes Erlebnis?
I remember when I was in Germany, the Packers and Cowboys game, the one where it was hashtag did Dez catch it or whatever. I'm sure you remember that one.
Yeah, you caught it.
Yeah, I know you'd say that. So I was in Joe Champs, and I remember sitting there around all these people, and people were like, did he catch it? And I was like, oh, he absolutely caught it. And then they obviously ruled it not a catch, and everyone was like, I thought you knew football. And it was super late, and I liked being able to watch the game late at night, but then once I started working and having to play baseball and getting up early, it started to get pretty tough.
But in the US, you watch all Sunday long for 17 weeks, and
with the London games also in the morning, some days.
It's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, for me, last year I wasn't as big of a name in fantasy football as I am this year, so I know I'll probably get up at 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I'll do my fantasy football answering questions and tweeting out stuff and everything that I possibly can, and then I'll watch football from, for me, Eastern time, 1 o'clock all the way to I go to bed, and there's nothing else I'd rather do.
And every damn Sunday.
Every damn Sunday.
Yep.
Dein lustiges Erlebnis, Pitch?
The funniest or the coolest? The coolest, right?
Yeah.
So last year when I won with the missed, I think it was a PAT or a field goal, I'm not sure, by Graham Garno.
Yeah.
That was the last situation of the game, and my opponent was on his way to win, and then he missed this PAT or the field goal, and then in the end I won. So that's crazy about fantasy football. Sometimes it's
and it happens so often.
Yeah.
It's when we started a few years ago, we thought, well, my brother came to the US for 3 months or something like that, and he brought it back together with beer pong. Beer pong and fantasy football he brought from the US back to Germany. We play a lot of beer pong over here right now.
If you want to, I can give you a better beer drinking game. I like beer pong's okay. It's kind of close to the game. I've played it in Germany. It's you guys put like a water bottle in the middle of a field and try to hit it with a tennis ball. I've played that in Germany.
You mean how is it called?
Did you play Looping Louie?
That name's not familiar to me, no.
Looping Louie?
No, see, like the game that I like to play though, it's easier in the US because we drink a lot of canned beers. You guys have more bottle, but what you do is each person has like a bottle of beer, and you take a ping pong ball, and if I throw the ping pong ball and hit your beer, and I drink my beer as fast as I can while you and your teammate run after the ping pong ball and bring it back to the table, we call that beer ball. It's kind of like the game in Germany that I'm thinking of. I know we used to play it all the time.
Flunky ball, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. It's also a very popular festival game, and for students in Germany.
Yeah.
We tried it. How's the name again?
Flunky.
The other game
okay.
from the US.
We called it beer ball, but I mean there's a lot of different names for it, but it's literally just taking a ping pong ball, hitting the beer bottle. It's going to fly really far. You chase it and you drink until the other person brings it back. So,
okay.
We'll try.
All the drinking games.
So there's some special segment on our show we did it a few times now. Mm-hmm. It's called Mehr, oder weniger. More or less in English. We'll give you a name. And you tell us if they will perform better or worse in the next season. We already did some names in the past, so we have some other names right now for you. I think some of them are very difficult. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, not so difficult. But we will look forward to hear from you. The first one is?
Jordan Matthews.
800 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 2016.
Is it Jordan Matthews? Sorry, I kind of cut out. Okay. I'm going to say Vinegar. I think the additions of Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, I think they're going to cut into Matthews' production a little bit, and it'll come down.
Okay. Willie Snead, 895 yards, 4 touchdowns in 2016.
Yeah. He was supposed to be the wide receiver 2 on the team last year until he got hurt, and then Michael Thomas took over. If he's this season's wide receiver 2, playing the slot in that Saints offense, the Saints offense is going to pass the ball. Brees is going to throw for yards. I mean, we know that. There's been 9 times in NFL history where a quarterback has thrown for 5,000 yards. Brees has done it 5 times. So they throw for a lot of yards, and I think Snead will have a better year.
What's your take about Michael Thomas, real quickly? He's going in the second round or something like that right now.
He's really
and
high.
It's really, really high. And do you get some Michael Thomas on your teams?
I have Michael Thomas in some dynasty leagues, but in PPR, he's my wide receiver, I want to say 8 above Des Bryant. But in standard, he's my wide receiver 9 or 10. So I think he's just in a really amazing opportunity. I mean, if he can get 130, 135 targets, there's no reason why he can't be better than what he was last year.
Okay.
So, Amari Cooper, 1,149 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, and it's simple. It's the touchdowns. I think the touchdowns are going to go up a little bit. It's his 3rd year. He's still super young, and the 3rd year is the year we see guys take that big leap. And it's the rookie year, they're already just so overwhelmed. The 2nd year, they start to learn a little bit more. And I think this is the year Cooper really puts a lot of it together. The Raiders have a very tough schedule, but I think he scores more touchdowns.
Which wide receiver from the Raiders do you prefer? Cooper?
Cooper. I like Cooper. I think he has a better year, but I could easily make the argument that Michael Crabtree's at a better value.
Okay.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins, 4,917 yards, 25 touchdowns in 2016.
So I'm going to say gleich. I know that's kind of cheating, but
we call it the Mucki.
The Mucki.
In German.
Yeah, it's okay.
The what?
The Mucki. If you say it's gleich, it's the Mucki. Well, you don't want to say this or that, so you're mucking. We call it in Germany.
Well, I guess I'm that. I can tell you a story to a word very similar to that after the podcast, which I'm sure you'll laugh about. But for me, it's the fact that he only had 25 touchdowns. I see that number coming up. 4,900 yards. That's going to be tough to do. 2nd in the NFL last year. But when you have guys like Terrell Pryor, they still have Crowder there. If Reed can stay healthy, that's a big if. Their 1st-round pick in 2015, Doxson, if he's able to play, they have options and they are going to be able to throw the ball. I think his yards come down maybe around 4,600, but his touchdowns, I think he goes up to around the 29 touchdown mark.
We like that.
Yeah, I think the red zone efficiency last year wasn't that good on the Redskins, right?
Yeah, it was pretty low, and they also had a lot of rushing touchdowns. 6th in the NFL in rushing touchdowns was 17, and the running back situation's a little cloudy. I do like Samaje Perine a lot out of Oklahoma, but I think they lean more on Kirk Cousins this year.
Okay. Dak Prescott.
Jetzt sag nichts Falsches.
3,627 yards and 23 touchdowns in his rookie season.
Vinegar.
Okay.
He's my quarterback, I think 17. And I think Dak Prescott is a good real-life NFL quarterback. He's not the quarterback I want in fantasy. The Cowboys, I think last season, were 2nd lowest amount of plays. They want to rely on the run. They did nothing in the offseason to help him upgrade their weapons in regards to receiving. They lost 2 key pieces to that offensive line that not enough people are talking about. Doug Free to retirement and Ron Leary to the Broncos. And the Cowboys have an unbelievably tough schedule. I encourage anybody to go look at their schedule. It's not easy. It's much more difficult than what it was last year. And he had 6 rushing touchdowns on 52 attempts. When I look at numbers like that, that just doesn't add up to me. Jameis Winston, his rookie year, had 6 rushing touchdowns on 50 attempts and then went down to 1 rushing touchdown. Rushing touchdowns are really hard to predict, and I think he's going to be down around the 2-3 rushing touchdown mark. And when you take away realistically 20 points for a fantasy quarterback, I mean, he goes 20 points for my rankings is like 10 quarterbacks. That's how close it is. And it's for me, he comes out to QB 17, and it's why I think it'll be a little bit less.
Shady McCoy, 1,267 yards, 13 touchdowns.
So I'm going to say Vinegar. and it's because his touchdown rate last year was very high, highest of his career. The Bills don't have Anthony Lynn anymore, who their offensive coordinator, who was basically just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. I still think they're going to run the ball a ton, but I don't know if he's going to be as efficient. He's at a very high carry mark, as I said before, over 2,200 carries, I believe, and we start to see running backs slow down a little bit, and he's going to have a good year. I mean, I have him as my RB5. I just don't think he is as good as what he was last year.
Okay. Carlos Hyde, under 1,000 yards, 988 last year and 6 touchdowns.
I think your answer could change every week right now with Carlos Hyde.
Well, I don't remember. What was the word? Mookie? What was it?
Make the Mookie, right.
Yeah.
So I like Carlos Hyde as a talent, and I just wrote him as an RB bust in one of my articles. Carlos Hyde has talent. The 49ers, and this was the comparison that I made. Carlos Hyde, I think, on the field is fantasy gold. He's a very talented player, but just like gold is very soft. And Carlos Hyde gets hurt a lot. The 49ers, though, are they really, I don't know if they should be called, the 49ers, I mean, gold, but the 49ers as a team is a mine of fool's gold. I don't know what fool's gold is in German. I hope that makes sense.
Mookie's band in the past, Mookie's rock band, he had a rock band with, like when he was 14 or something like that, was called Fool's Gold.
Yeah.
Just
it's that.
on the side, right?
Yeah.
There you go. But just because your Carlos Hyde is maybe gold, but he's in a pile of fool's gold, is that really something you want to go mining in? And I'm going to say no. And he's going really high, and he has yet to been able to prove that he's to stay healthy. And the one thing that I thought was really interesting is we do fantasy football to win. I don't know if you guys know the movie reference, but if you're not first, you're last. And that's what I live by. Talladega Nights is the movie. It's with Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Carlos Hyde is not productive at the end of the season because he's always hurt. In his entire career, he has 270 carries in the months September to October. He has 140 carries in the months November to December. 11 touchdowns in the first 2 months of the year, only 2 touchdowns his entire career the last 2 months of the career. It's because he can't stay healthy, and I'm not going to draft a guy who can't stay on the field, is on a horrible team, and doesn't score touchdowns when I need it the most during fantasy playoffs. So
What do you expect from Joe Williams?
Man, that whole situation is just the reports out of camp change every week. Like it was a month ago, it was Carlos Hyde is going to get cut. Yesterday, I heard a report that Carlos Hyde's the best running back in camp. Tim Hightower took first team reps the other day. Joe Williams is the guy that they handpicked. Man, I don't know. If I could figure out that 49ers backfield, to be honest, guys, I probably wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be sitting in a way nicer apartment and a nice house and
Okay.
wouldn't be here.
The last name, we discussed it. We discussed very, very often. He's a Bears fan. Pitch is a Bears fan.
As you can see.
And he's very high on Jordan Howard, and I'm absolutely not. I think the Bears are the worst team in the league. And I think
the Jets are the worst team.
I think Jordan Howard will regress extremely next year. So the last name is Jordan Howard.
And it's Vinegar. And Jordan Howard is probably my biggest running back bust of the season. And it's for a lot of the points that you made. The Bears are probably the third worst team in the NFL. I think the Jets have a legitimate chance of going 0-16, and the 49ers are definitely up there as well. But I think the Bears have to be in that conversation. And Jordan Howard is a pretty good running back. He's an okay running back. If you want to talk about from an athletic standpoint, if you guys know what SPARQ is, SPARQ measures how much of an athlete you are. It stands for speed, power, agility, reaction, and quickness. Jordan Howard is in the 32nd percentile, so he's only as athletic as 32% of the running backs that have ever come in the NFL. The Bears don't have really anything around him, which scares me. Last season, Jordan Howard averaged only 3.4 yards with stacked boxes, so 8 guys in the box, which is one of the worst percentages in the NFL, which I thought was interesting, and I expect him to face plenty of stacked boxes in the NFL. Over the last 4 years, there's been, now five rookie running backs to score over 180 points in their rookie season. Doug Martin in 2012, Jeremy Hill in 2014, Todd Gurley in 2015, Ezekiel Elliott and Jordan Howard last year. Doug Martin, Jeremy Hill, and Todd Gurley in their sophomore year suffered major sophomore slumps. I just wrote an article, like I said, for Fantasy Pros. It'll be coming out soon, so I want you guys to check out how much of a decrease in production that those guys all saw. And I don't know if Howard will see that big of a decrease, but that team, I'm just not confident in the Bears, and there's no way he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And if they're crowding the box, and when NFL coaches get an entire offseason to scheme for you, it's a lot of times it's not good. So I'm going vinegar on Howard.
Is there any player on the Bears roster you would recommend fantasy wise?
Nope.
That's bad.
Their defense is okay. Their defense is a little bit underrated, I guess. But besides that, I mean, I don't know. You can't. There's no way you could sell me on any guy. Maybe Meredith on the value, but he's got to be my wide receiver 4.
Okay.
So we got a lot of infos from you, but what are your top 5 if you have a new fantasy footballer, right? And you want to give him 5 tips to start with an advantage. What are the 5 tips he has to live by?
Golden rules
to win some leagues or to win some games. Are there any golden rules?
Well, I would say follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365. Listen to my podcast and obviously this podcast. No, I would say pay attention to news. Follow football all season long. You're going to find out a lot of things about new incoming players in the off season. You're going to find out how much guys' stock is rising and falling. I'll say watch the games. Don't just look at the numbers. You don't see the full story all the time. Trying to think how many that was. And yeah, I don't know, just be involved. The more and more you listen to, especially podcasts, and I know in the US we're always so busy over here, and I like to throw in a podcast, and I listen to probably 6 or 7 hours of podcasts a day doing my daily chores or whatever the heck I do. And the more you're surrounded by something, the more you're going to be involved in it. But at the end of the day, fantasy football is supposed to be fun, so let's not forget that.
Mm-hmm. So what's your where do we get your podcast and your writing stuff? Once again, it's Gridiron Experts, and the podcast is called?
The podcast is, if you search on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, if you search Gridiron Experts, my podcast will come up. But we have 3 different segments under the Gridiron Experts podcast, and the segment that I do is the Empire Fantasy Podcast. So I do that with owner Mike Ritz. Check it out. Give it a 5-star review. It's always appreciated. But to find my work personally, it's just search Mitchell Renz, and you can look at the Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros. I'm the head writer at Gridiron Experts. Also, I think fantasy football is a lifestyle, and our clothing should match that lifestyle. If you guys want a t-shirt from fantasyfootballtshirts.com, let me know. I can hook you guys up. It's a website that I help run. So if you guys want some fantasy football gear to wear over there, let me know.
Okay. Great. So we are right at the end, I guess. You said you had a trophy bigger than I am. Do you have something for the worst team in your league? Something like the Toilet Bowl winner? We have some what it's called punishments in our league.
Yeah, actually, probably the most famous fantasy football article I've ever written in regards to views is my top 10 fantasy football punishments for finishing last. So if you get time, look up Mitchell Renz top 10 fantasy football punishments. You get some pretty cool ideas, but I don't do it with any of my leagues with my family, but I do it with my league with my buddies in college. And unfortunately, I can't really share a lot of the stuff that we do, but
we know.
We can talk off air, and I'll tell you some of the stuff. But yeah, you have to do punishments. We spend so much time trying to reward the winner, and it's 10 times more fun punishing a guy.
We have a calendar shoot coming up this year and last year. The worst team has to do a calendar shoot with some stuff made up by us, and we hang the calendar on our bar for everyone to see.
Just internally, but the whole year, the whole season.
And there's some very nice and sexy pics and stuff like that. That's some great stuff. So thank you, Mitch, for your time.
Yeah, really appreciate it. It was really cool.
Maybe we can do some in the season again with some insights from you. We will follow you on at Mitchell Renz
365.
365.
Mitchell Renz 365. Yep. Yeah, that would be awesome. And anytime you guys want me back on, I would love to do that. And it's awesome to see that you guys do fantasy football in Germany. And anytime you guys find yourself in the States, or if I'm ever in Germany again, I will definitely hit you guys up. We'll go out for sure.
That would be great. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
We always end the show with was haben wir heute mitgenommen? What did we learn today? And ich denke, wir haben heute extrem viel über Fantasy Football gelernt. Wir haben
auf jeden Fall
ganz, ganz viele interessante Fakten mitgenommen, die uns jetzt auch sicherlich teilweise nicht bekannt waren.
Auch wirklich überrascht haben, ja. Absolut.
Und alles Weitere kann man sicherlich dann nachlesen auf diversen Kanälen, wie eben auch schon von Mitchell mitgeteilt. Ansonsten, wenn euch das Ganze gefallen hat, lasst 5 Sterne auf iTunes oder Stitcher da, einen dicken Daumen hoch auf YouTube, bei uns, bei Mitchell, und dann geben wir euch sowas natürlich in Zukunft sicherlich nochmal. Und am Mittwoch sind wir dann mit einer regulären Sendung wieder zurück, mit Episode 42 dann, und bei uns dann zu Gast Pi. Und mit ganz, ganz viel Fantasy Football und natürlich auch alles rund um die NFL. Die letzten Worte, Pitch einmal, und dann natürlich zum Schluss darf sich auch noch Mitchell verabschieden.
Ja, es hat mir heute besonders viel Spaß gemacht. War eine coole Ausgabe und wünsche euch eine gute Woche.
The last words from Mitchell.
Danke. Tschüss.
Ciao, tschüss. Macht's gut.
Ciao.